Welcome to the eCommerce Profitability Show, a podcast by Link My Books. We speak with profitable e-commerce store owners and experts to help your e-commerce business become profitable. Because revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. I'm your host, Dan Little.
Welcome to the e-commerce Profitability Show. Joining us today is Chelsea Cohen, founder of SoStocked, serial Amazon entrepreneur and copywriting expert with 10 years in the field. Chelsea, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much.
So, jumping straight in, can you talk to me a little bit about your background and how you've got your first bite for e-commerce entrepreneurship?
Sure, yeah. I think, being on a profitability podcast, it probably is relevant to mention that I spent 4 years as an account executive in a financial management firm. So that was my previous life before Amazon, which kind of leads me into what we created in SoStocked. As far as learning about Amazon, there was a course called The Amazing Selling Machine by amazing.com.
Yeah, I did that as well.
You did that one? Wait, who are you?
6. ASM 6.
Oh, yeah. I was ASM 3.
Oh, wow.
So 2014 was when we started. July, we made our first sale. And just got addicted to it. The people were really great. And we launched our products. We ended up quitting our jobs. And then in 2018, that's when the inventory started clobbering us. So we became interested in figuring that whole thing out.
Yeah, so I guess that's sort of lead me in my next point here. So is that why you founded an inventory management software called SoStocked?
Yeah, absolutely. I looked at my financials and I saw, we didn't make as much revenue as we thought. We didn't make as much profit. And we had stocked out once on our bestseller, once for a month and once for a week during that year. Then we had made a bad purchasing decision and had a bunch of storage fees. And I realized how impactful inventory is on your profit and your revenue, looking for solutions. And there was nothing really out there. There was a couple of things that were not very transparent. And I couldn't figure out what is the algorithm that's getting me these results. They didn't have a timeline. So they said, this is your next order. Just trust us. And we have really smart people working for us. And we're probably smarter than you. And so I asked people, what are you guys using? And they said, we've tried all the software. Nothing really works. We're using spreadsheets. So that's the general gist. And that's why SoStocked came about, was because I felt, well, if spreadsheets can do it, a software should be able to do it better. What's wrong?
Nice. So what are the unique challenges that exist for e-commerce entrepreneurs now revolving around inventory then? What's the top 2 or 3 that you see?
Yeah. When we started, 3PLs were not a big thing. People would send direct to Amazon a lot of the time. As you expand, you start using 3PLs, but there were no limits on how much inventory you can send. So that became a big challenge. Not so much anymore. The way that Amazon, rather than putting limitations, they put fees. So they're kind of forcing people to continue to be better at inventory management without restricting them. They're making it very, very difficult or uncomfortable and unprofitable to have inventory sitting there.
So what other sorts of things do new clients come to you with, problems they're trying to solve?
Yeah, I'd say tracking their inventory. That was an interesting one when we started out, just not knowing how much inventory they had, not knowing where their inventory was, and just generally not having systems in place to predict when you're going to need to restock, especially if your lead times are very long.
So do you think that when these people start selling online, do you think they truly understand all of the fees that Amazon is charging around their fulfillment? Do you think people know really how much money they're making?
No, that's the difficult thing, because inventory-based business, it's, a bunch of cash out, and then you're making all this money and you've got this money necessarily, especially starting out, you're not projecting how much at this current rate, how much money is it going to take to place my next order, let alone launch a new product. You could get backed into a corner where all of a sudden you've got Christmas coming up and you don't have the money to fund what you're going to need. And then that's where the funding companies come in. And then, you can get into some trouble if you don't really truly understand your business. All of a sudden, Christmas didn't go the way that you thought it would, and you're paying all this money in funding fees. So it's an important piece, and it's something that I think is a downfall of a lot of businesses. It's not understanding and having an idea of not just profitability now, but in the future.
Yeah. So not just forecasting your actual inventory that you require, but forecasting how that's going to affect your bottom line as well, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we're thinking about these new sellers or growing sellers who are having these teething problems with inventory, what are the sort of strategies that you recommend in terms of effectively pricing their products when it comes to thinking about all these extra fees that can come from inventory? Because I can imagine that a lot of people will go out there and they'll say, I can buy this product for X. I know that Amazon will charge a 15% commission. They'll charge this FBA fee for when it's picked and packed. So I can make $5, happy days. And then they'll leave it at that. Do you take it further?
Yeah, a lot of people know their landing costs and they know what Amazon is going to charge them. And even now, people factor in the ad spend. If you're relying on ad spend costs from, a year ago, that needs to be refreshed. And then beyond that, the big piece that people don't think about is the storage and the additional fees, mostly storage accumulating over time. And so if you don't factor that and you know that you are going to sell, let's say it takes 5 months to sell through a product based on your MOQ, that's 5 months that you're being charged storage. Say it costs 20 cents in the first month, and then it's triple and quadruple, and then it turns into fourth quarter, and you're being charged $2.40 per cubic foot rather than 78 cents. All those things need to be factored. And then aged inventory comes into play at 6 months, drastically increases at 9 months. So you've got all these factors, and you should play out the best and worst case scenario of what your actual profit is once this whole life cycle plays out of your product.
Yeah. So not to push too far on SoStocked and make it into a plug for SoStocked, but I can imagine that with all of these fees that are sort of coming from all angles, that sounds to me like a genuinely hard Excel equation to do. If you've got fees that are coming in at various times and different amounts and percentages, and it just becomes a bit of a logistical nightmare. How does SoStocked manage that? Does it sort of give you an idea of this should be your pricing, or does it do anything like that, or how does it work?
As far as pricing, we don't have anything regarding pricing at the moment. We are building some things in terms of understanding true profit, understanding projected profit. But as far as some of the fees, we launched an overstock fees dashboard. So looking at two different factors, you've got monthly storage fees, and you're going to pay those monthly storage fees. You can't get around it. But what you can control is how much in monthly storage fees you pay. So we'll show, based on your current forecast and the inventory that you have, do you have over 90 days worth of inventory? And we'll take that segment and we'll say, this is avoidable storage fees. And so we do a calculation of avoidable storage fees over 90 days. And it's using Amazon's policy, because their policy for monthly storage fees is different than their policy for aged inventory. And so we'll take that policy and we have a timeline, so we can track against a timeline. How much is it going to cost you each month for the entire year of the life cycle of that product? So that's the first piece of that. And then the second piece is aged inventory. And that's calculated a completely different way. So, just to make it interesting, Amazon calculates on the 15th of every month how much inventory do you have at different ages. Amazon gives you this amount, say you've got 1,000 units, and say 500 are aged at 9 months, but 300 is aged at 60 days. They're charging you based on the age of each of those units.
On top of your monthly.
Yeah, there is a report that will tell you what you are predicted to be charged in the next month, but they don't give you a picture of the ticking time bomb that you're sitting on, maybe with products that are about to age into 9 months, for example.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that SoStocked does do that.
Yeah. So we took that and we tracked that because we have a timeline. So we can see what's predicted the 15th of every month, and we pull the data for the aged inventory. And one of the interesting things that I think that sellers are not taking advantage of or don't realize is that Amazon, they check on the 15th. So if you place a removal order, not recommended, removal orders are horrible. But if you got to get rid of product, you can place a liquidation order. And so as long as you place that liquidation order before midnight Pacific time on the 14th of every month, it basically, even though Amazon hasn't moved that inventory, you're not paying those storage fees. The storage fees assessed at the 15th of the month because you've placed that removal. I'm talking to some clients right now. I'm like, place this order. Here's the one that you need to remove. Place the order by the end of today. Because today, right now, is March 14th.
It's the 14th, yeah. I know you've said the date now.
Yeah.
I'm joking. No, I understand. Yeah, well, I think that is definitely one strategy. What else can people be doing? So now we've got a picture of these are the units that we need to get rid of. These are the things that are going to cost us the big fees coming up in the next 15 days or whatever it be. What can sellers be doing to reduce that?
First of all, you got to know there is a report in Seller Central. So we're adding more features in SoStocked, features specifically for that. But for someone who is not using a tool, there's a report inside of Amazon, the SBA Inventory Report, and that will give you the age of your products. So it gives you, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and it'll show you the products that are currently being charged aged inventory surcharge. So you'll be able to see, and you can take one of those columns and say, how many of my products are over a year, which we've seen products that are over a year old, and you're being charged $6.90 per cubic foot over a year. So going through and seeing which of those products, what does it look like to place a liquidation order? And you're going to generally lose money. It's not going to be break even, but you've already spent that money. You've already spent the money. It's been sitting, the cash has been sitting in your business, not being utilized. So you could be sitting on a good amount of cash recovery where you place that liquidation order, you can get at least some of that cash back. You stop the bleeding with maybe it was $4,000 in fees that you were going to be charged over however many ASINs. You pull it out and you make $4,000. That's kind of a net of $8,000 in cash flow in the next 2 months within your business.
Yeah, makes sense. What else can people be doing then? Is it a case of run flash sales, or is it like by that point, is it too late to do stuff like that? Or
it doesn't have to be flash sales, dropping the price. Oftentimes it can be more profitable to just do a flash sale and sell out in the next 2 months than placing a liquidation order. Then we're going through this with the client, going through ASIN by ASIN. Which ones can you move and which ones do you not think you can move? If you're in wholesale, what is your buy box percentage? Do you have 100% of the buy box? Is Amazon selling on that listing? Also, what is the best seller rate? If this has not got a lot of traffic, the best seller rate is very low, then that can tell you this product is not moving. I have 300 units. It's really going to be very difficult to move that inventory in marketing. So, you make those decisions. Market or move. We like to say market or move. And then from that point, if you're deciding to market, you can drop your price, increase your ad spend, discounts, lightning deals. The marketing team can decide what is the best for that. But the first thing is kind of choose your own adventure. Do you need to remove it or do you need to market it?
Yeah. No, I can see that, how that would work. I think that it's just another calculation, isn't it? You need to work out if these long-term fees are going to be harsh enough that you need to do something now and do a liquidation, or do you maybe have a little bit of time to be able to try and sell through some of that inventory? I guess that's going to come down to the individual price of the product and various other things as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That, and also I think the fact that's not considered is that cash recovery. Maybe it'll take 5 months to sell out and you're like, I could sell this and, I could sell this at a profit. Yeah, maybe you can, but sitting on that cash for 5 months, what is your target return on investment generally? The velocity of money, how quickly can you turn that over? And those are calculations that we're just starting to dive into to give that insight.
No, that's the thing, isn't it? Because if the product that you've got too much inventory of, when you do your liquidation, if you're going to get X ROI, if you can then invest that money into another one of your best sellers, which has given you a much higher ROI, then it just comes down to calculations, doesn't it? I love a bit of Excel, me.
Yeah.
Cool. Right, okay. So with all these new protocols coming in then, what does it mean for the e-commerce space in 2024 and beyond? Is it easier or harder to run a profitable e-commerce business, would you say?
I think that it's harder for the people who are still focused on the marketing piece. 2020 really taught us that we needed to focus on the inventory piece as well. And I like to say, having been in this community for 10 years now, I like to say that the community has been forced to grow up very quickly in the last couple of years. It's been very focused. We used to call ourselves internet marketers, we didn't call ourselves e-commerce sellers, brand owners. It was internet marketers. And that's the mindset, is their marketing, very marketing focused. 2020 came about and now all of a sudden they had to get really smart about inventory. There was a vacuum and no one really knew what to say about it. And so, people like me got hooked on all the podcasts, all the webinars, because we had some knowledge for the community that wasn't previously provided. Now we're seeing that marketing and then inventory, and the last leg of the stool, so-called, is the finance piece. And I think that people who are going to succeed are going to have to get really smart about the finance, the profit, the cash flow, the capital utilization piece of the business. There's going to be a lot of companies that fail this year. Amazon's forcing a market consolidation with sellers, with brand owners. And so it's going to create a real difficulty for some. But at the same time, when competitors fall out, you gain more market share. So you need to be ready to service that market share. So it's a very interesting time for professional sellers who know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think that when I started, and when you started, I started in 2015, I think. You were back in 2014 when you said. I think that back then, it was maybe a little bit easier to get off the ground, and it was maybe a bit easier to like gain traction because there wasn't quite as much competition. It was a bit of Wild West, so there was like super URLs all over the place, and you could rank things relatively quickly and like do special promotions, etc.
Yeah, reviews wasn't, you could incentivize reviews like crazy.
Yeah, for me, it was like build a moat of reviews around your product. Once you get to 2,000 reviews, it was like you're basically set. Like, I think now people can come into a market. I was just talking to Aaron Cordovez the other day on one of the other podcasts, and he was talking about how he entered the garlic press market. And it was like, that was almost the golden product, wasn't it? It was the one that everyone talked about. All the amazing seller machines. It was always the demonstration product was a garlic press. And it became like the internal FBA joke of the garlic press, and no one would ever touch it. And then he came into the market and he just thought, I'm going to crush the garlic press, literally. Yeah. And he came in and he crushed it.
Yeah.
And it's now had case study after case study done on it. Like, obviously the webinar we were on the other day, Chad Rubin was doing a case study on it. So it's amazing to think that like nowadays, if you really do want to make it in e-commerce, you have to have a good product. You can't just launch a Me Too product anymore, whereas I think that's what we could do back in the day. So it's like, it's going back to true marketing, but then I think you've hit the nail on the head. The other big part of it is understanding your numbers. Like, there's too many sellers out there back in the day that weren't really making money, and they cost the whole market money because they drag the price down, because they just want to get rid of their stuff because they're not making money and they want to close down and they sell the last 1,000 units. It's just bad for everyone. Whereas now I think people need to really understand, like, what are the tax liabilities? What are the inventory costs that are going to affect them? How does that affect the bottom line? How can I then launch new products when my cash flow has been prohibitive? Like, there's a lot more like business acumen comes into it. And as you say, there's not really anyone teaching that.
Yeah, absolutely. Having this data, and every decision that you make with inventory is going to impact you financially. And so if you don't have the right information, or you're not looking ahead far enough, I like to say inventory is like a ship, like the Titanic. You see there's that iceberg coming. You see just the tip of it. And if you don't turn the ship fast enough, you can see it coming slow motion, but there's nothing you can do to stop it because you've got that inventory sitting there. And it's not like you can snap your fingers. You can't just turn off ad spend. Ad spend is something where you go, there's too much. I'm losing money on ad spend. I can just turn that off. You can't turn off inventory. So it's one of the most expensive mistakes you'll make is an inventory mistake.
Yeah, it's definitely a very good way of putting it. I think that is a good analogy. I think that if you do have enough time to plan and make changes, maybe you don't have to make as drastic changes as when you're right on top of the problem. So yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. So we've talked enough about problems now, I think. Now we need to turn it a bit positive. So can you tell us some success stories that you've seen firsthand of e-commerce businesses successfully navigating Amazon with your help?
Yeah, actually, I got a really great email earlier this week. And there's a seller who has a seasonal business, and Q4 comes around, fourth quarter, he has a bunch of inventory left over from his season. And usually that's not a big problem. But with all the fees that have hit him, it was just a huge bite out of the profit. And so we got on a call at the beginning of the year, and he was telling me what was happening. And I said, sell through the inventory. You got it. Sell through as quickly as possible, which seems to me, those types of decisions, they're hard for sellers to come to grips with. They're like, well, I could sell this, I could wait till the next season and sell this. And some people can. Some people's products are small enough that it doesn't really matter. But if you got these big products, drop the price and sell it he contacted me and he said, they were sitting on $45,000 in storage fees and got that down to like 10 in 2 months. And it's just sometimes you need someone looking at your business objectively and saying, this is what you have to do financially. If you can look far enough in advance, you can make those decisions.
Yeah, it is a bit emotional though, isn't it? Like running a business and you've got your own little brand and you want everything to be successful. And I can imagine you do get quite attached to your product. I know I did back in the day, even though I'm quite logical. But I think that it does, as you say, often require that just like outside eyes, fresh set of eyes to say, listen, you really need to do something about that. But in that situation then, so when he's got a seasonal product and let's just hypothetically say that in order to sell it out of season, he has to drop it to half the price. But if he kept it until next season, he'd be able to sell it for full price. Would there ever come a time where it was worth him then pulling those out and then sending them back in? Because didn't Amazon have something about that if he pulls something out, he can't send it back in or something along those lines?
Yeah, you've got 3 months that after you pull it out, they won't let you send it for 3 months. If they start seeing sales pick up, they'll allow you to send some more. But generally, if you've pulled it out right before your season, Amazon doesn't have the sales history to validate allowing you. So as far as making those decisions, it might make sense. Of course, it's all about running the numbers. I'm working with another seasonal business that their products are small enough that we ran the numbers, and a lot of them, they can hold them for a year and still be okay with the storage fees, still make more money. It's just now a question of, can they make more money if they extract that cash? It can make financial sense. And that's why we say, run the numbers. There's never an answer where I wouldn't say you got to run the numbers. There might be better ideas that you can kind of eyeball, but you won't really and truly know until you run the numbers and then you look at your scenario, sometimes ASIN by ASIN.
Yeah. I suppose you've also got to factor in the 3PL that you're going to then send them to, and they'll have storage fees and ship them back in and stuff like that. So yeah, it's maybe not as easy as it sounds.
And removals are so expensive. Like we've run a lot of scenarios of what was the 3-month impact, even on products that are over a year old. 3-month impact versus the removals. And the removals are always higher than the 3-month impact, which is, crazy. So that's why we started looking at, okay, what are you going to get back with liquidation? There's people who don't want to tarnish their brand by liquidating some of the product. That's the only decision that I've seen, unless you can sell that on a different channel. Like some people, they are able to pull it out. One of the clients, he said, I can pull out those products. I can break them up and sell them as singles. That's when a removal makes sense. So it's not that there's never a scenario where you don't do X, Y, or Z. It's all kind of on a case-by-case basis, which is where the finesse comes in.
Yeah. So diving a bit deeper into the liquidations then, because that's not something that I had when I was an Amazon seller. And we see liquidations coming through in the settlements in like my books. But how does that actually work then? So are you selling it to Amazon and then they are reselling it, or do they put it on pallets and sell it to other people? How does it work?
Yeah. So we place a liquidation order. Like we said, that stops the bleeding in terms of the aged inventory and the storage fees. And then Amazon's going to charge you a removal fee up front, but that removal fee is significantly less than normal removal fees. So they'll charge you that fee, and then they'll put your inventory out to some liquidator. And they're going to return, they estimate, looking at your selling price, between 5 and 10% recovery. So you've got that kind of range. You're going to lose money on the process, but it's a good idea when you'll probably lose more having it stored there and you can't do anything with it.
Interesting.
And then some people do liquidation outside of Amazon. You have to factor in the removal fee, the additional cost of the removal fee. Amazon makes it more expensive to not liquidate with them. So if you have 3PL inventory, you can look into those options, but oftentimes the numbers make more sense. Unless the liquidator can get you a very high return, the liquidations generally make sense for FBA inside of Amazon's system.
Yeah, understand. Okay, then. So thinking about SoStocked again, then what sort of new innovations can we expect in the near future?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of work with profitability. The hole in the market is profit forecasting. A lot of tools have profit, and they say, this is what your profit is right now. But your profit right now is not likely your profit 3 months from now. If you've got slow moving inventory and you've got aging inventory, first, your entire catalog. What is your profit for your entire catalog? Your profit dollars, your profit margin, and then drilling down. some of those products we're looking at, okay, if we look at an entire catalog and we can see, project your profit, and that profit is going to change significantly when Q4 comes around. You'll make more revenue, but the cost of storage increases. So kind of looking at that and then drilling down to, well, show me everything in my catalog that is below 10% projected profit, or show me what would happen to my profit if I removed those products. How much more cash would I have? How much more profit would I have? What would my margins look like? To start to divorce yourself from the idea that every product is valuable. If you can show someone on a graph, what does it look like? It makes the decision a lot easier when they're staring at the numbers and the visual. I think the numbers get muddy in people's heads, but if you put a visual to it, that helps to make the decision easier for them.
Yeah. I'm smiling because it reminds me so much of when I ran my Amazon business, and I had a couple of products that after a while, they just like go downhill, don't they? And they just like got less and less and less and less profitable, less return on investment, but you're still so attached to them. It's like, it's one of your first products that you launched. Yeah, I'm only making £1 per item or $1.30 per item, but so what? It's still making money. But it's not about that, is it? It's about if you took that time and investment that you're putting into that product and you took a new product, or you put more money into a new variation of one of your existing products, how much could you then move the needle? And so I think it's nice to see that someone's trying to put that into a nice graph, because I think if I'd seen it, I might have ditched my product maybe a year less than I did.
Yeah, the graphs are crazy. We put them together for aged inventory, and being able to see, if I look at my entire catalog, what do those fees look like, as they increase? And you can see the jumps. Okay, well, a bunch of products must have aged into 9 months here. And then fourth quarter comes in and we can see what that looks like. And then we go in and we say, okay, take these 5 off. If I just liquidated these 5, what does that look like? And you'll see the comparison graph is very drastic. And over that 8 months, 12 months, you can save tens of thousands of dollars just by removing 5 ASINs from a catalog.
Yeah. Interesting. I think that'll be cool. When can we expect that then?
The plan is mid-May. So we're looking at doing some beta launch right now. So mid-May is when we generally are looking to start kind of opening that up a little bit wider.
Nice. Well, by the time this one goes out, we're currently about 3 months ahead in recording. So we're currently at 14th of March. So you might be lucky enough to already have that inside of SoStocked for anyone who's listening.
Yeah, that's the hope. The approach is going to be a little bit different because you probably know, you give talks, people have been on stages, people have taken pictures of my slides. We do, free profit audits. People look at the data, and they say that's very impactful. Wow. And then they go back to marketing and they don't really do much about that. So our approach is we're going to have a program to help people to do something about it. Weekly focus reports. What are the marching orders for the marketing team? What are the marching orders for the inventory team? The inventory reports are more important to the marketing team than to the inventory team, which I don't think is expressed often enough. So, these weekly reports, here's what you're supposed to do. And we've been working with a couple of people in beta just to start and identifying what are these products that are costing you? What do you do with them? And, line by line, you can look at those products and you can make those decisions. But, with one client, it wouldn't get done if we weren't there to help him to do it.
So do you mean it's going to be almost like software and service moving forwards?
It'll be, supplemented. It'll be software. And then we're able to kind of supplement with the reporting and some calls, access to people who understand this type of thing. They know what the data means and what to do with it, and that they have clear action items every single week. And especially, we're talking about quarterly call, to be able to look at 6 months down the road and say, Q4 is coming. Isolate those products that are not going to move in Q4 and make sure they're not there. Make sure you don't have, or very little, just enough to get you through Q4. But why would you pay $2.40 per cubic foot for a product that is not going to move in that quarter?
Yeah. It's almost like having like a fractional ops manager or head of ops or someone like that sitting behind the scenes helping you to run your business. It's quite similar with Link My Books. Obviously, our software automates bookkeeping and does a bit of profitability tracking and stuff like that. But a bookkeeper and an accountant really makes it work, because there's one thing having the data, the other thing understanding the data. And so I think more and more we are seeing now also like fractional CFOs, fractional financial directors coming in, And then they use the data that we've been able to generate to then better advise the client on how to grow their business and how to achieve their financial goals. I'm hoping that we are seeing a bit of a move towards that as a market, that people are moving away from just looking at data to actually understanding what it means and then doing something about it. So yeah, we are trying to build everything. We've just recently launched this benchmarking thing, which I was telling you about last time, wasn't it?
Yeah, that sounds really great. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so one of the things we've done on that is we have tried really hard to show people the benchmarking against where they sit in the market, against industry averages for various different KPIs, but also to show them like 10 different ways that they can improve it for specifically their KPI. So we are trying to sort of like build in the advice piece as well. Instead of just looking at a load of nice looking graphs and then being like, oh, that's cool, I'm in the bottom 25%. It's like, oh, but I can do these things and I can move up and then come back next month and measure it again, sort of thing, to become like a process. That's the hope anyway. So sort of leads me nicely into my next question. We as e-commerce people know that none of us are perfect. And we've definitely made some mistakes in our businesses in the past. I know I have, including not getting rid of that product. So could you share any mistakes that you've made and what you've learned from them?
Yeah, I would say the inventory mistakes have been the big ones. I mean, I've got tons of nightmare stories, coupons that were coupon stacked. And I was getting on a boat for a mastermind and we were losing connection. We're on the phone with Seller Central trying to get the sales to stop. So that was, you have those types of things, but they're mistakes versus learning experiences. I mean, everything's a learning experience. But I think the inventory side of things has definitely, that was a huge problem, was not controlling it, ordering too much. All of the most expensive mistakes that I made were those inventory mistakes, because you can let it sit there and ignore it. And then it's never going to be a good situation if you don't face it head on and if you don't know what's happening, place that order or follow up with your suppliers, all of those things that cost me the most money, I think. Just having things organized and looking forward.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be the e-commerce profitability show if we didn't ask you some question around profitability. So what's the one thing that you can give as your best piece of advice for e-commerce professionals to do right now to boost their profitability?
I would say downloading the SBA Inventory Report and getting a picture of what your inventory age is. You would scroll all the way to the end of the column. It's a very long report, and that gives you the inventory age and it gives you how much you're going to be charged in the coming month. But look at the age, even of the products that are not being charged, and make a plan of which of those ASINs are at risk and take that and create a marketing plan around that before it bites you.
Good advice. Good advice. Okay, last question. Who in the world of e-commerce would you most like to take to lunch and pick their brains?
Someone like Tyler Jeffcoat, I think that would be fun because he's an accountant. And I love to talk to the brokers, the accountants, the finance side of things, because I feel like they're the smartest in terms of they're not talking about what everyone else is talking about. And the levers that can be pulled can have a significant impact on a business. And then that just gives me ideas in terms of, software and where we should be as a software community serving e-commerce sellers. I think that there's a lot of room to grow into that space as SaaS creators, into the finance space that isn't being served currently.
Yeah, nice. Well, interestingly enough, I actually have a call with Tyler next week.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think it was just totally randomly. Interestingly, also introduction from Nick Penev. We're talking about him at the start, weren't we? So yeah, I will drop your name in the conversation and see if we can get him sent your way. Maybe not for lunch, but maybe at least picture.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
that'd be great.
Cool. Right, okay. One last question then. I said that was the last one, but this is actually the last one. And that is just how do people get in touch with you and try SoStocked?
Yeah, SoStocked.com/connect. You can find my socials and email. And then there's demos of SoStocked. You can check it out. And we have some free tools also. So we have a product resizer, which will look and see, do you have opportunities to reduce your FBA fees, fulfillment fees? We have a carton optimizer. And those two are specifically tools to help you increase profitability. So you can check those out there also.
Nice. And the other thing that I'll throw in there as well is that recently Chelsea and I did a webinar, and I will link that below in the show notes. And also following on from that, you did another webinar, didn't you, with Vanessa Chung, I think is the name?
Hung, yeah.
Talking about all the new changes to FBA fees. So for anyone who wants to learn a bit more about that, obviously we've talked a lot about inventory today, so it might be nice to have a little look at some of that as well. So I will link that below.
Yeah. And if you provide the link, carbon6.io/fee stack, we have a white paper that goes over all the fees. So that'll probably be helpful as well.
Nice. I will make sure we get all the right links and stick them all in the description below so the audience can just have a little look at them at their own perusal. Okay. Thank you very much for today, Chelsea. Nice chatting to you, and I will speak to you again soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
The e-commerce profitability show is brought to you by Link My Books. To find out more about Link My Books and how to accurately automate your e-commerce bookkeeping to ensure profitable growth, visit linkmybooks.com and then make sure to search for e-commerce profitability in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Link My Books, thanks for listening.